Welcome to all of our campuses and those of you who are joining us online at all of our extensions. Today we are wrapping up our Lost Art of Friendship message series, and in just a moment, Stacy is going to come and bring the message. But before she does, I have some news that is just too good not to share. As we got back from our international trip, we saw God do great miracles in our Hong Kong campus and in our campus in the Philippines, Santa Rosa campus there. And Stacy and I with Karis flew there, along with several others from the team. We flew there almost 2.5 weeks ago. Right before we got on the plane, we heard that there was a typhoon coming. And so we were like, okay, should we go or not? A typhoon's coming. We're like, yes, we'll still go. So we got on the plane. When we landed, the typhoon was just off the coast, and we were there to celebrate with them their 10th anniversary and participate in a conference that they were having called the Oneness Conference. Now, that conference was designed to support, equip, and help pastors from all over Hong Kong. 800 people had registered, and the typhoon is coming towards Hong Kong as all of this is colliding. So we gathered together after landing on Friday night with their leaders to pray. Because of the storm, they were about to have to cancel it, and we prayed that God would push the storm out to sea, or at least hold it off until the conference happened. Now, Stephen and Rosanna Lee, they've been there as campus pastors from the very beginning. And as Stephen was driving home that Friday night, the night before the conference, he's driving home, and on his way home, he sees this car with the license plate that says Oneness on the back. Now, out of curiosity, anybody ever seen a Oneness license plate other than seeing it on the screen here? And Stephen felt like it was God telling him, I got you. This Oneness conference is going to happen. This weekend is going to happen. So that next day, 800 leaders from all over Hong Kong came. They were equipped, encouraged, and God did great work through our Saddleback Hong Kong campus there. After that day, the next day, we were set up to have our 10th anniversary, and the storm starts taking a turn, coming closer, and we're like, okay, what's going to happen? Well, the next morning, on Sunday morning, Pastor Stephen wakes up and gets a call from the conference center saying, hey, we think you need to cancel your celebration because the storm is coming and the city's going to get shut down. And Stephen's like, no, we've been planning for a year. We're not canceling this now. We'll start the event earlier. So he reaches out through WhatsApp and says to the whole campus, we're starting the 10th anniversary 30 minutes earlier. Everybody get here. Now imagine that if we tried to do that here. It was like, so everybody shows up 30 minutes earlier, and the stadium is packed with people, close to 2,000 seats. And that day, we were able to baptize 47 people who made decisions to follow Jesus. And what was wild about it was the conference director is like on the phone, or the location director who runs the place is like on the phone texting Stephen like, hey, you guys need to get out of here. The storm is coming. The whole city's going to be shut down. So service ends at 12:30, and at 12:45, all of Hong Kong is shut down because of the storm. Now tell me God was not at work in that, performing a miracle, making the storm stay at bay, and he's a God who works miracles. So we celebrate what he did in Hong Kong. So we left from Hong Kong. Now, if it feels like I'm going fast, I'm trying not to take too much of Stacy's time, as she's going to bring a great message. And, the preacher always gets blamed for going too long. It's good to say that, by the way. So we get to Santa Rosa in the Philippines. We're greeted by Pastor Mike and Tanai and their team there. You'll see a picture here of their staff. We had a great opportunity to celebrate with their volunteers. We got to go to their weekend services, close to 1,500 people, packed in this building that is busting at the seams. They're already doing multiple services, and they're preparing to expand their space. It was unbelievable. The hospitality, love, the food. We were just blown away by what God is doing in this campus. Now, one of the highlights was getting to go to CIW, which is a prison in Manila that's connected to the campus. Grace is the leader of this extension of Saddleback Church. It's the largest Saddleback extension with close to 900 women gathering in a prison. Grace originally made a decision to follow Jesus by getting a copy of Purpose Driven Life and she got some DVDs of Pastor Buddy Owens, and she started watching them. She followed Jesus. She said, I want to start something in the prison. So she reached out. Pastor Jake Cranda helped her, and she started this extension, which has been growing, baptized hundreds of people. Now, that day, we were set up to baptize 50 people, but we only baptized 39. Now, you might say, oh, that's a sad disappointment. But Grace, she actually saw it as an opportunity because there were 11 women who were registered to be baptized. But at the last minute, the night before, they were transferred to another prison. In fact, she was called in, and there were these women that were crying, and they wanted to talk to her because they're like desperate. We want to get baptized tomorrow. We don't want to get sent to another prison. But Grace immediately had perspective to see with faith, with eyes of faith. And she thought, this is not the prison just transferring people. God's doing something here. Because these 11 women, they have all been trained as Saddleback small group hosts. So God was sending these women, and she said to them, hey, you'll get a chance to get baptized. I know it's not tomorrow, but you will. God is sending you to this other prison because he wants to use you. So these 11 women who were trained as small group hosts sent to this other prison, which is right next to a Saddleback extension in a town called Davao, where there's a leader who left the Philippines campus, the Santa Rosa campus, went down there, started an extension that now has about 100 people. Maybe one day will be a campus of Saddleback Church, but these women are now down there at the prison right next to that extension. Tell me that's not God at work right there. God is moving pieces around, and he's doing the miraculous through us. We serve and worship a God of miracles, and he is performing them in and through his church. And these stories, we got to baptize 39 women, 47 in Hong Kong. God's moving miraculously, and I think he's worthy of some honor and glory. So let's put our hands together one more time to celebrate. Stacy, my bride, is going to come wrap up the message series on friendship, bringing an incredible message. So let's show her some Saddleback love as she comes to bring the message.
Well, it is so good to get to be together today. A warm welcome to all of you. I also have to give a shout out to our Santa Rosa campus and our Hong Kong campus and say, I love you guys and I miss you, and I'm still full. I'm still digesting all the food that you fed me while I was there. It was such a great trip. So today, as we launch into this message, I want to start with a question. And so I want to ask you if you would be reflective with me for a minute, kind of engage your mind here, and think about this question. Do you ever feel incredibly frustrated by your own inability to change? And maybe there's some behavior inside of you that you're really wishing was different, some type of character quality that you wish you could refine, something that frustrates you, that disappoints you about yourself. Do you ever find yourself frustrated? Maybe you want to stop smoking. Maybe you want to exercise more. Maybe you want to stop yelling at your kids, or whatever that habit is, but you just find yourself back there. I think we lean very heavily on willpower, don't we? When we decide to change something, we think, if I can just get motivated enough, and if I can get a clear plan, and I'll just stick with it, I'm going to do this thing, I can do it. But I wonder if you would be honest enough to admit that willpower just is not cutting it, right? As much as we want to, as much as we try to change, sometimes willpower just doesn't seem like it's enough. Well, there's a lot of research actually that has come out to show us that change is not as individualistic as we would like to think that it is. It's not just up to me all the time if I'm going to be able to change or not. Research is showing us that change is actually a team sport, that we are dependent upon the people around us in our community to help us change. That change requires community and a tribe around us to help us pull in that direction that we want to go. Change is a team sport. And I want to share with you a bit of research that I came across as I was preparing for this message today. There was a study done on the United States Air Force Academy. on a group of cadets that entered in as freshmen, and it followed them for their 4 years. Now, when cadets enter in as a freshman at the U.S. Air Force Academy, they get placed into a squadron. It's a group of about 30 other cadets. They're all randomly selected. Every squadron is basically the same. And these squadrons become very tight-knit groups of people, like family groups, basically, because they do everything together. They eat together, sleep together, train, study. Everything that they do while they're at the Air Force Academy is going to be in these groups, these squadrons. And so the research was trying to track why is it that some squadrons really excel when it comes to physical fitness, while other ones, they don't see that kind of improvement. They might all start at a similar level, but some of them are going to really improve and others are not. And they were trying to figure out why is that? Because they're basically living the same lifestyle. Well, the determining factor that they realized was the least fit person in the squadron. That person was the determining factor, their attitude, their outlook. If that person was highly motivated to want to get fit, if they wanted to improve their physical fitness, if they had a positive attitude, then it kind of rallied the whole squadron. And they were like, all right, let's go for it. Let's do this. And you would see vast improvements. But if that least fit person in the squadron was kind of negative, kind of critical, maybe a little apathetic, then it was like contagious within the whole squadron, and they would not see the kind of gains that this other squadron would see. It was the effect socially that one person had was tremendous. And I want to read to you a quote from this article. The guy that wrote this article, his name is Brad Stulberg, and he says, so much focus on behavior change and performance focuses on the individual, yet that is only half the story. Working to build a better self almost always means working to build a better community or tribe with which you surround it. This concept holds true whether you are trying to get better at running, painting, writing, making music, parenting, or coaching. And I might add for our context, or growing in Christ-like character. It holds true if you're trying to quit smoking, adhere to a healthier way of eating, or start a new exercise program. It's true if you are a beginner, or if you're on the verge of becoming world class. In other words, listen to this. The people with whom you surround yourself have an enormous impact on your life. In many ways, they shape it. Those are some strong words. You might be familiar with the popular quote that says, you are the average of the 5 people that are closest to you. And I think I first heard that quote when I was a stay-at-home mom and I was homeschooling my 3 little kids, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, the 5 people closest to me at that moment, that explains a lot about the way I'm feeling right now. I'm the average of them. But it's interesting to think about the people that are having the biggest influences on us. It's the people that are closest to us. But not only that, not only are those people having a huge influence on us, we are also influenced by tremendous amounts of other sources, such as what's going on in the media, what the social trends are of the day, the region of the country that we live in, the neighborhood, our work environment, people that we casually interact with. These people are all having impact on us. And so the tribe around us, the people that are surrounding us, are influencing our behavioral choices, and for better or for worse, they're having an effect on how we live our lives. You might say it like this, that our tribe shapes our trajectory. The people around us, our tribe, it's determining the direction of our life. And so if we say that we want to go in a particular direction, if we have certain goals and certain dreams, then we need to get people around us that are also pulling in that direction, because our tribe around us is shaping our trajectory. Now, this is not new information. Like, this is stuff that we have known for a very long time, right? Like, our mothers were teaching us this when we were 12 years old. Like, your friends, I'm telling you, your friends are having a big impact on you. And I know your mom taught you, my mom taught me. I'm sure trying to teach my kids. But this is not new information. If you go back even further than that, 3,000 years ago, King Solomon wrote that he who walks with the wise becomes wise. But a companion of fools suffers harm. So all this new data and scientific evidence that sounds so smart, telling us all this information, it's all just pointing to what Solomon said 3,000 years ago. If you want to grow wise, you need to have wise people around you. Another way that you could say this is that what is in someone else can get on us. What is in them can get on us. So you have a casual encounter with someone that's really gossipy, and they're like spewing all this gossip on you, it can get on you, right? And if you're not careful, it can get down in you. And then you start to reflect that behavior as well. If you have a friend that's very critical, they have a negative outlook on life, what is in them can get on you. And it can then get inside of you too. And so we have to be very intentional about thinking through the way that these social interactions, the way that people around us are affecting our lives for better or for worse. You know, we are being affected by so many different outlets, but the 5 people closest to us truly are having the most significant impact on our life because they're the people that we go to when we're needing advice on something. They're the people whose opinions matter to us. And I wonder if there's anyone that has gotten some bad advice before. Like if we could just go around the room for a few minutes and just kind of share our sob stories of when we got some bad advice and it took us to a place that we did not intend to end up. I want to tell you a story about some bad advice that one of my sons got. He was 4 years old at the time, and the advice came from my other son, who was 6 years old. I want to show you a picture of them just so you can get the full context of the story here. This is what Caedmon and Sammy looked like when they were about 4 and 6 years old. And so one day, as usual, we were doing what we called room time. Room time was 1 hour every day of independent play. They would go to separate spaces in the house. Caedmon would play independently, and Sammy would play independently. Little did I know, they had walkie-talkies. And so Caedmon comes in, and he's like, Sammy, Sammy, can you hear me? And Sammy's like, yeah, I can hear you. And Caedmon goes, hey, Sammy, you should go ask Jake if he can come over and play. And Sammy's like, okay, that was some bad advice. He should not have gone to ask Jake if he could go play, because that meant Sammy, my 4-year-old, has to go out of the house, down the street, around the corner, across the street to Jake's house. Well, there is an exit door in the area where Sammy's playing. So unbeknownst to his mother, Sammy exits the house and follows this very bad advice that he had received and goes and knocks on Jake's door. Jake's mom opens the door and sees Sammy there. Can Jake come and play? She looks out the door. No, not today, Sammy. And so Sammy's like, okay. So Sammy goes across the street, around the corner, down the street, back to our house. I never know that this has happened. You guys, this had happened 2 times. 2 times. The only way that I found out that this happened was that weekend, Jake's mom comes up to me at Little League, and she says, hey, Stacy, I just want to make sure you realize Sammy has come over twice this week asking if Jake could play. Excuse me? Now, the thing that makes this story even worse is that Jake's mom just so happened to work for social services in the Child Protective Services Department. Talk about a mom fail, right? I mean, what an embarrassment. And I'm like, I'm sorry. He received some bad advice. What can I tell you? He followed the wrong advice. It took him to a bad place. But all of us have been there. Like, we've received some advice that we should not have listened to. And today we're going to look at a story in the Bible where someone listens to advice from counselors that he should not have listened to, and it cost him greatly. You are probably familiar with the name King Solomon. King Solomon was the 3rd king of Israel, and he was King David's son. So everybody knows the name King David. So King Solomon was a great king in a lot of ways. He was very powerful. He had the largest land amount of Israel that Israel ever had. I'll show you a map right here. And you can see the blue territory is Solomon's kingdom. And that's the most land that Israel had ever had. And so he was a great king in some ways. He was able to fortify the cities with walls and gates. There was safety. There was freedom of trade during that period of time. He had done all these massive building projects, not the least of which was his palace, and also a world-renowned temple. People would come from all over the world to see Solomon's temple. People would come from all over the world to hear Solomon's wisdom. So in a lot of ways, Solomon was a great king. In other ways, he was very foolish. The Bible teaches us that Solomon had 700 wives. Can you imagine? That's not wise. And 300 concubines. So I did a little math here. Solomon was king about 40 years, which means that he was averaging 18 weddings a year. The guy was having a wedding and a half every month. Can you imagine? He's called the wisest man on earth, but he had some real cracks in his character. Let's just say that. So as amazing as all of this stuff was that Solomon was able to build and do and accomplish in his lifetime, there was some stress that the people were carrying because that was a lot of work that they were carrying out. They were the ones that were having to build all the things that Solomon had in his mind to build. And so the people were feeling the burden of that. So there was definitely the benefit of Solomon's reign. There was safety, there was prosperity, but there was a great burden that they were feeling. And what was happening was that burden was getting greater than the benefit. So it did not feel worth it anymore. So from the outside looking in, Solomon's kingdom looked really strong. But on the inside, it was beginning to crumble a bit. All of those wives that Solomon married, they worshiped other gods. So there was moral compromise inside the country. All of those burdens that Solomon had placed on the people, they were being crushed under the weight of it. And so Solomon is about to die, and he's going to hand his kingdom to his son, Rehoboam. But he's not handing him a particularly stable kingdom. It's rather shaky. And once you get in under the surface, you can see that more. And that's exactly where we're going to pick up the story in 1 Kings chapter 12. It's on King Rehoboam's coronation day. It says, Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone there to make him king. Now, when Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard this, he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon, and he returned from Egypt. So let's just stop there for a second because there's two names in these verses, and it's a little confusing because they're weird names. We got Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and unfortunately they rhyme, and so it makes it all the more confusing. So let's just talk about it. Rehoboam is the king. He's Solomon's son, and he's the fourth king of Israel. Now, Jeroboam is not related to them at all. He's from a completely different tribe. But the Bible refers to him as a man of standing, and that he was actually a really good leader. Solomon had witnessed his leadership skills and had put him in charge of a large labor force in Israel. But Jeroboam became a bit of a threat to Solomon because he was such a good leader, and one of the prophets prophesied over Jeroboam that one day he would be the king of 10 of the tribes of Israel. Well, of course, Solomon did not like that, and so he's like, all right, out with Jeroboam. He tries to kill him. Jeroboam flees to Egypt. But he's a great leader, and he's a threat to Rehoboam's leadership. And so that's where we pick up in verse 3 when Jeroboam is sent for. It says, so all of Israel sent for Jeroboam, and he and the whole assembly went to Rehoboam and said to him, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the load of a harsh labor and the heavy yoke that he put on us, and we will serve you. Rehoboam answered, okay, go away for 3 days and then come back. And so the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders. Can you just circle or underline that word, the elders, because that's very significant. That he consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. And he says, how would you advise me to answer these people? So far, so good. King Rehoboam, this is the first major decision that he's going to have to make as king of Israel. And so he realizes this is a big decision. I'm not going to make it hastily. And so I'm just going to pause for a minute and I'm going to seek some counsel. So he's doing the right thing. He calls the elders together and he asks for their advice. What would you do? In verse 7, they reply, if today you will be a servant to these people, and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. They're going to be loyal to you. Now, things take a turn for the worse in verse 8, where it says, "But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders and consulted the young men who had grown up with him." Can you just kind of underline that phrase as well? Instead, he consulted the young men. These were his boys, right? These are his fraternity brothers that he gathered around him. These are all the boys that are trying to impress him because he's the new king and they want to be appointed to some important position. He gathers the boys around him and he says, "Hey guys, what do you think?" So he asks them, "What's your advice? What should we answer these people who say to me, 'Lighten the yoke your father put on us'?" So these young guys, what do you think they're going to say? Are they going to come with the same level of wisdom and experience as the elders did? In verse 10, the young men who had grown up with him replied, they said, "Let me tell you, these people have said to you, 'Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make it our yoke lighter.' Now you tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Your father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." Now that is some intense advice, right? That's over the top. That is not even necessary. But they come at it with this intensity, and how do you think that's gonna go over, Rehoboam? Do you really think that this is going to go well for you? If they come in big and you're gonna come in bigger, how is that gonna go down? So Rehoboam has this decision to make. He has been presented with two different kinds of advice, and he has to decide which one he's gonna choose. In verse 12, it says, 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam, as the king had said, "Come back to me in 3 days." The king answered the people harshly, rejecting the advice given him by the elders. He followed the advice of the young men and said, "My father made your yoke heavy, I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." So the king did not listen to the people. He listened to who he wanted to listen to. He was deeply influenced by the people that were right around him, and it cost him greatly. That decision cost him the kingdom of Israel. From that one decision, the kingdom of Israel was split that day. I'll show you another map up here. You can see that the northern tribes, there were 10 tribes that broke off from the kingdom of Israel that day, and they formed the northern kingdom of Israel that was loyal to Jeroboam. They made him their king. Only 2 tribes stayed in the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, and they remained loyal to King Rehoboam. So from that one decision, he split the kingdom, never to be reunited again. And you just wonder, what went wrong? Well, we have hindsight perspective, right? So it's very easy for us to see, man, he listened to the wrong advice. He listened to the wrong people. He had the wrong people surrounding him that he trusted. And bad advice will get you unwanted results every time. You think that you are heading in one direction, but you get some bad advice and you are gonna end up somewhere that you do not want to be, because bad advice gets us unwanted results. So if you want to be wise, you have to walk with wise people. And if you've got some goals that you want to accomplish, if you have some things in your life and in your character where you want to grow, man, that tribe that surrounds you is very significant. The tribe affects our decisions. Have you ever noticed how friends start to resemble one another? We start to rub off on each other. And never is this more obvious than when we are in high school, right? I love high school students so much. Andy and I started out in student ministry. And even up until a year and a half ago, I had a high school girls small group. I love high school students. They're so fun and they're hilarious and they have the potential to change the world. And so I really love student ministry. So when I was serving in student ministry, one thing that would make me laugh were all the trends that would come through. So there was a while where Vans were the cool thing, right? And everybody was wearing Vans. Everybody in student ministry, different styles, different colors, but they were Vans. However, before too long, it transitioned to Air Force Ones. And everybody starts showing up in Air Force Ones. And all those poor mamas out there, we're like trying to scrape together money because our kid is like, I need some Air Force Ones. And so that didn't last forever, though. It wasn't that Air Force Ones suddenly became uncool. It was just that Blazers now entered the scene. And so now everybody needs to go get a pair of Blazers. Well, somewhere along the way, we took a hard right turn, and I don't think it was actually the right turn at all because we ended up in Crocs. And I don't know how you go from Nike to plastic shoes, but it's a thing, and it's very popular, and everybody loves Crocs now. And it just makes me laugh because I would see my girls come to group, and they would all have like the same hairstyle, and they'd all have the same food in their hands, and they'd have matching sweaters, and they were so adorable. And I would laugh because I do it too. Don't we all? Like if you go to a gym, everybody at that gym starts dressing in the same way. Or if you have a certain, like if you're a young professional in a certain job market, man, you all start dressing the same way. When I go to a pastor's conference in London where everyone is like really cool, you better believe I am thinking about what I wear because I'm not gonna be that one girl that shows up in like what I wear to school pickup or something. Like I'm gonna be very intentional because we do that. We get in a tribe and we start to talk like them and dress like them and we think like them and we value the things that they value. And that's just what happens to tribe. And that's why it's so important that we get the right tribe. And so that's what I want to talk about for the remainder of our time together is how do we get the right tribe? And I want to give you a tool that will hopefully be helpful to you. And this tool is called the table test. And you guys know that any leader of a country, like a president, prime minister, chancellor, they have some type of cabinet that surrounds them, an executive council. And so, like in the United States, we have a secretary of the treasury. We have Secretary of State, all these really important titles, Secretary of Defense. There's Secretary of the Interior. There's probably 20 different people on the president's cabinet. Secretary of Education. This one is Secretary of Health and Human Services. I don't even know what all of these people do, but they have very important titles, and they have been invited by the president to sit at his table and give him counsel because he trusts their advice. He trusts that they have some level of expertise and wisdom in an area that can help him accomplish the goals and inform the decisions that he needs to make. Now, what I want to propose to you is that we all have a table. And some of us have never really thought about who's seated at our table, but we all have a table and people are probably sitting around it. Some of us probably have a few crazy people sitting at our table, like some people that just kind of invited themselves over and you're like, I don't really think I want you at my table, you know? Some of you probably sit down at your table and you're like, wow, there's nobody here. I am doing life alone. I am a self-made man and you're trying to go at it alone and maybe therein lies your frustration about why you can't change because change is a team sport. And you realize, man, I ain't got nobody at my table. But I want to think about how we could become more intentional about the people that we invite to sit at our table. We all have areas in our life where we need to grow, where we could invite some specific input, advice, counsel. Like I wonder if anybody in this place needs a secretary of financial peace. Maybe you're struggling financially and you need somebody to speak into this. And you know what? The guy to go to is not your buddy who's $50,000 in debt, right? You don't want him giving you financial advice. We do have some financial advice available through Saddleback Church. We offer financial peace. There's a lot of resources here, people that could sit at your table. What about a secretary of relational health? You got some relationships in your life that are broken, where you need advice, you need parenting advice, you need marriage advice. You don't want to go to the person who's in and out of relationships and on their third marriage looking for marital advice. We have to be intentional. a spiritual director perhaps. So you want to grow spiritually, you want to get closer to the Lord. How about asking someone who has been down that journey themselves? Maybe you need a recreation analyst because you work yourself to the grind. You're working 60, 70 hours a week, and you need someone to be like, we're gonna go have some fun. So you need a recreation analyst. You might need a director of personal growth, or maybe a physical fitness expert in your life. We all have areas in our life that we would benefit by intentionally inviting other people to speak in, intentionally inviting people to sit at our table. Like we don't want to do this haphazardly. So many of us don't even think about who's sitting at our table. It just ends up people that end up close to us by accident. But there are some people here at the table that maybe need to leave, and there are some vacancies at this table where you need to invite some people in. Now, our church has a table, and we call our table small groups. And small groups are a chance for us to gather community around us because, we don't just need experts speaking in on our lives. We need friends. We need community. We need people that are just kind of rowing in the same direction as us. People that we can do life with, that they share similar values and goals and dreams. They want to grow spiritually. They want their families to represent a certain type of value system. And we gather those kind of people around us because there's power in the tribe. There's power in doing life together. There's this sense of we have somebody to laugh with and someone to celebrate with when there's a birth of a baby and someone to go to when we need to consult about our parenting struggles, someone to come near us when we are in grief and in crisis. I know that so many of us, we aren't in a small group because we have these excuses, right? Like I've heard so many different excuses about we're busy, this is a hard season for us. Maybe I'm an introvert and I just don't really feel the need for it. There's all kinds of reasons why maybe we would not prioritize getting into a small group right now. But let me tell you the one time that you're going to really wish you had that. It's when you go through a crisis. I'm going to tell you a story about a precious couple in our church named Greg and Betty Hopkins. Greg and Betty have been in the same small group for 17 years here at Saddleback. These are people that have invested deeply in relationships. And they not only do Bible studies together, but they also go fishing together, and they go on camping trips together, and they share meals together. They've gone on mission trips overseas together. These are people that have done life with one another. They have walked through some things together. Well, several months ago, Greg got up early one morning to go fishing, as was very normal for him. But he never made it out the door that day. A couple hours later, when Betty woke up, she found Greg there, and he was gone. And before Betty ever even dialed 911, her first thought was to call her small group. So she called someone from her small group, who in turn called everyone else in the small group. And Betty got on the phone with 911, and everybody, they all came. And within 30 minutes, one couple after another showed up at Betty's house to surround her in that crisis. These were people that she knew and that knew her, people that she had done life with. These are not just some casual acquaintances that come and bring a pie when you're going through a crisis. These are brothers and sisters to her that said, Betty, we're gonna walk with you through this grief. You're not gonna do it alone. Betty went and she actually moved in for 3 weeks with one of those other small group families. And they said, Betty, we're gonna feed you. We're gonna make sure you take a shower every day. We're gonna make sure you get out of bed every day. We're gonna take care of you and be your people. We will help you with all these decisions that you have to make. We'll help you plan a memorial service. We are your family. And that's what we want for each of you. Not that you would go through a crisis, but on the day the crisis inevitably knocks at your door, that you would have a tribe. We talk about small groups over and over here. And when we invite you to be a part of a small group, it's not because of something that we want from you. It is only what we want for you. Because God intended for us to live life together, to have a tribe that surrounds us, that supports us, that helps us to grow and to change and to share joy and to share sorrow with. All of us have areas in our life where we are wanting to grow, where we're not satisfied with these patterns that we've gotten stuck in. We want to change. We want to become the people that God has created us to be. But listen, friends, change is a team sport. And if you go at it alone, you will probably remain in your frustration. But if you will gather a group of like-minded people around you, if you will be intentional about who's at your table and who's in your tribe, then you have so much more likelihood of reaching the goal that you have in your mind, of growing in your relationship with Christ, of having healthy relationships with one another. That is the way that God intended and designed life to be. The goal is not independence. I'm not raising my teenage sons to be independent. They should be interdependent with community around them. That's how life was designed to be lived. So as we wrap up this message together, I want to just have a time of reflection for a few minutes. And I want to walk us through just 3 questions to think about. What would God be speaking to you about in this moment? What is he saying to your heart about the tribe, the community that either is or isn't currently around you? And the first question that I want to invite you to think about is who's currently seated at your table? Who is currently seated at your table? Maybe you would just write down in the margins there or type it on your phone some actual names of the people that are closest to you. And can we just be honest here, please? Can we write down the actual people? Because some people are going to be a great influence on you, very positive influence in your life. Others, not so much. Other people, maybe you had a relationship with them for many years, and maybe at one point in your life, they served such a valuable purpose. But perhaps today, they are not helping you reach the goals that you want to reach. And maybe we just need to be honest about who's at the table. So would you think about that? Would you write down some of the names about the people that are currently seated at your table? Secondly, would you write down, who do I need to invite to join? Maybe there's some gaps in your life, some areas of growth where you feel stuck, and you need to be intentional to surround yourself with some people that can help you grow in those areas. We have a lot of resources here at Saddleback Church that can help you grow in a variety of areas, financial peace, different areas of relational health. There's all kinds of groups and interests that can come alongside you and support you in this journey called life. The third question is, who should I invite to leave? Not necessarily with a kick in the seat, but with a gentle, I love you, but I'm gonna put a little space between us now. Who should I invite to leave? Because no longer is that person serving the purpose that they need to serve in your life. Everybody here at this table, they serve at the pleasure. That's a phrase that we use for the president's cabinet. They serve at the pleasure. And when that person is no longer deemed to be a contributing member of the table, then they're asked to leave. And sometimes that's the hardest thing for us because we get stuck in these relationships and we think that we're stuck and we have no options here. But there are boundaries that we can put in place between us and other people. And it doesn't mean that we don't love them, that we don't care about them, that they're not important to God. But we need to be honest about the effect that they're having on our lives. So maybe you would just put your notes aside for a minute. And let's wrap this up with just a moment of prayer where we invite the Holy Spirit to speak to us specifically about the relationships in our life. So Holy Spirit, we just invite you now to put your finger on our heart, whatever it is relationally that you want to grow inside of us. Father, would you give us wisdom as we think about the people that are in our tribe currently? People that maybe need to be invited to join our tribe. people that maybe we need to invite to leave. Maybe there are some people here that they just feel compelled that they need to get into a small group, community, surrounding themselves with other people who are like-minded, who want to grow in their relationship with you. God, I pray that today people would have the courage to follow through, to take the next step in their relationships. I pray, Father, that you would help us to accomplish these different goals that we have, these areas of growth and change that we want to see in our lives. And convict us, Father, that we're not doing this as individuals, but we're doing this as a team, as a tribe, and in a community. We pray for your blessing to be upon our lives and that we could learn to walk in a way that honors you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.